Yeah.
So here we are from PJ's Coffee in beautiful, sunny, slightly breezy Monroe, Louisiana.
Yes. PJ's. Much better than Starbucks because they use large, medium, and small. It's-
Hey, my nomies, and thanks for joining us again here on the MT and Me. Our show's going to be a little bit different today. Most of it is going to center around a visit with Ree concerning her recent installation of a tankless water heater in her camper. Something that, of course, we're pondering about possibly doing on Pearl one day in hopefully the not too distant future. Now, the story will develop into some other aspects too, aside from that, so I urge you to watch until the end because things take a turn or two in the course of this eventful day that I spent just a couple of days ago. Now, as for that visit, Ree and I decided to meet up in Monroe at our favorite restaurant, A Taste of India, have a delicious lunch, and then go over to a nearby coffee shop, PJ's, and talk about her recent successful installation of a tankless water heater. The thing started turning a little bit on the way to Monroe. I was about halfway there when my trusty Equinox started trying to overheat a little bit. Now, granted, it was almost 100 degrees, heat index 105, 106, and I'm sure that pavement is even hotter. So it's a really hot day, but still, I had not had any overheating problems in the past, and my car was getting to some serious temperature levels. So I stopped a time or two, let it cool down, and then kept driving, heated right back up. I finally got to within probably 12 or 13 miles of my destination, and I decided, I'd better just stop and let it cool off and deal with this later. So Ree was already in Monroe, and so I called her up. I said, "Do you mind coming and getting me? And we'll go eat and do our thing, and then I'll come back and deal with this problem." So she said, "Sure, why not?" So she comes out, gets me. We go. We have our food. We go to the coffee shop, and I tell you what. Let me just pause the story right here and take you to our coffee shop conversation concerning water heaters, and then we'll move on from there.
Because, as you know, I just replaced my water heater, and in my brand new camper, the water heater that came with it was a Suburban, what was it, SW6D,
Sure, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is a 6 gallon, standard 6 gallon Suburban water heater. And it has had a fault in it from day one. It has not worked. And the place that I bought it from said, well, you can bring it back and we'll keep it for a couple of months and figure out what we could do with it, which would have left me homeless for 2 months.
She goes, "No, you don't understand. I'm living in this, right?"
So because I've been in it, 2 years now,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and I finally was able to buy an Impulse water heater, and it's an off-brand, but it's got a separate controller. It's really nice. But we were going to talk about how easy and difficult it was to work on all this, right?
Right. Yeah. Because and to tie this together is that she's got me thinking now that definitely the impulse water heater might be the route to go in Pearl.
Oh, we got cops in the
Yeah,
turning around in the middle of a very busy road.
they're across the street doing something. So
Spinning around. He's in Dixie Cleaners. Yes, I said Dixie. And if you know, you know, and if you don't worry about it.
wow. Talk about flashback. So, as I was saying, she's got me thinking that a impulse water heater will be the way to go when I get ready to put one in Pearl.
Well, it saves the weight of the water. You're not traveling around with that extra 6 gallons of water weight. So it really is a lot more economical as far as weight distribution goes to go with the impulse versus the tanked water heater.
So, her water heater was pretty well standard fare that you get on RV.
In the original one.
In the original one, yeah,
Yeah.
the 6 gallon, and it kept it was a what fault did it keep throwing?
A direct spark fault or something like that. It wouldn't light. That's what it was. It just wouldn't light.
Mm-hmm.
So it had a DSI fault.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But the thing is that she had like no hot water. Well, unpredictable hot water. When it worked, and when it didn't, it didn't. And most of the time.
And most of the time it didn't.
It didn't. So,
I can count on one hand the number of times in 2 years that this water heater worked.
so anyway, she ordered this. What brand is your?
It's like a Asware or something like that. It's a no brand.
Mhm.
It's not a main popular brand. It's just an off brand.
But it
You
is a propane impulse water heater, and the difference here is, and this is something I really hadn't thought about. When you're ideally, if this works right, you would, like taking a shower, only use the hot water.
Yes, assuming that your groundwater is cool enough that you don't have the. Okay, so where I'm at down near Pineville, Louisiana, it gets so hot down here in the summer that the groundwater is almost the perfect bathing temp. So I really have not been in a big rush to replace the water heater since I got down here. But now that I do have it replaced, I've set the controls for 106 degrees, which is supposed to be the perfect bathing temp, between 106 and 111. And every time I turn it on, it'll go up to that temp, but then it'll keep going because the burner can't burn low enough with the water already being hot enough that it can maintain the temperature. It gets up 150 degrees just trying to keep the thing lit. And so I end up having to add cold to it anyway, but I have unlimited hot water, so I'm not real worried about it. This is like the opposite problem from what I did have, which was too much cold water, and I'm enjoying having this problem.
And if you're careful, you can mix in the cold water tab as long as you don't reduce the flow too
Right,
much.
as long as you don't reduce the flow too much to the hot water, to the water heater, because then the burner will go off because there's not enough water going through. So, yeah.
For those of you who don't understand, an impulse heater depends on water flow in order to heat the water. The greater the flow, the more it heats. And as you reduce water flow, it's going to cut back to keep from burning itself up. Basically, is what it amounts to. So, but that's just the principle behind it. Tell me a little bit about your experience as far as taking out the old and putting in the new.
Well, taking out the old, you've already experienced that part because you've already taken one out.
You basically disconnect hot and cold water lines and the gas line and the power and pull it out.
Right. Now, I had to recruit some help. Yes, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you. Mo came and helped me out, and he got the tough connections broke loose for me. And then I ended up having to drain the entire system and cut the lines, the water lines, because I couldn't get them disconnected from the back of the old unit without tearing up the unit. And I didn't want to do that because I'm actually passing it on to a friend. So I cut the lines installed a new bypass and then installed that into the new unit once I got it in. We had a little bit of difficulty, and I was on the phone with you for a while trying to figure out the electrical because I had an extra wire, and all it said in the schematics was that that wire went to the light, and they didn't say what light.
Yeah.
So
Very inspecific, saying
Yeah.
the light.
So we finally figured out that it goes to the fault light, the little DSI indicator on the panel. So we just tossed that wire off to the side and hooked. Well, I tossed that wire off to the side and hooked everything up directly, and it's worked like a charm. Well, it kind of scared me at first because when I first hooked it up and I turned it on. Sorry, I hear a train. It always makes me think of Nick. So the first time I turned it on, it didn't come on, and I couldn't figure out why. But I had had the gas line disconnected from the old unit for almost 2 weeks while I was waiting on the new bypass to come in. And so the line was completely clear of gas. And I had to wait for the gas to go back into the line before it would kick on, before the new water heater would kick on.
It had to purge all of the air out of
Right.
the line. It had to do that to the burner because we didn't purge it before we hooked it up. So, right.
You got a frog in your pocket? Because I don't remember your hands being up in there. I'm the one that wrenched my back trying to crawl around on the floor under the refrigerator, okay?
It was a pretty tight. What the biggest problem I think of the whole job was lack of workspace.
Yeah, I was crawling around on the floor trying to reach up underneath the refrigerator to get to the water heater, which was a lot of fun. I don't recommend it, really.
And the other thing we found out in working out the electrical issue, and this is just for anybody's reference, is that there is apparently absolutely no code or rhyme or reason to wire color in RVs.
Oh, yeah.
Different manufacturers will use different colors, and for your hot, it's all 12 volt, most of it anyway. It's 12 volt, DC. And so you just have a hot wire in a return. And a lot of times your return is just on the chassis like it is in a car. So sometimes that works too. But in things like going to appliances, you actually have a return wire, 2 individual wires, because the electrical circuit is isolated from the chassis for safety reasons. But all that aside is that you may have we have a red, a green, and a blue wire. But the ones coming out of the water heater were not those colors.
They were black, white, and 2 blues.
Yes. So the 2 blues went to
The
the control panel, which is separate for this water heater. And so we said, okay, well, there's not going to be a fault light. So we finally figured out blue went to the fault light. Therefore, the other 2 had to be by default. And red by default would be positive.
Right.
And
The instructions, although were not originally in English, nor were they originally translated to English, but they did not specify a whole lot of details on how you were supposed to do this. There's a whole lot of figuring out, but the one thing that they did stress was if you wire it up backwards, you're going to fry the system.
yeah.
So yay!
So don't do it wrong and turn it on. So but anyway, she did it right. To her credit, she did it right. She did the hard work because I'm trying to coach her on a telephone from 150 miles away.
Yeah.
And which is hard to do, especially when you find out that there's really no rhyme or reason to this. So
But he wanted so bad to help, so I tasked him with figuring out which wire was which.
That's it. So anyway,
Yeah.
got it right. So overall, what would you say is the most challenging part about swapping out and doing the install?
Having to take everything back off because I hooked it up backwards and having to put it back on.
Oh yeah, that's another story altogether there.
Yeah. So the hardest part was trying to get the lines over to make the connections because the way my camper was originally plumbed, they obviously had the water heater in, and the lines, the hot and cold lines, were cut to fit that water heater. Well, whenever I replaced it, the inlet and the outlet on the water heater were in different places. So I had to finagle them around and make them fit, which I did. I wrenched my back doing it, but I did it. At one point, I had my body pressed up against the shoe storage on the front of the bed, and I'm pushing hard, and I'm pushing into the, and I got both hands and a foot up there trying to get it, but it was comical, and I'm glad there was not a camera involved.
We should emphasize this is a very small camper that we're talking about here. Not a lot of floor space to begin with.
Yeah.
And, it is. It's built like a submarine. There's no wasted space in it.
Especially now that I've started building new cabinets.
Now that she's modifying it to suit her lifestyle. So
It had no storage. It does now.
But anyway, this entire process, we should note that you've not had any, aside from the temperature issue, getting it to boil the temperature, you've not had any problems at all.
No, it has not given me the first bit of trouble. I have to turn the power on and off from the original switch on the panel. And once I turn that on, then I turn the power on. Actually, when I turn that on, the power comes on to the control panel. But if I don't do anything with it, within 45 seconds, it cuts off.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no water flowing through the pipe within 45 seconds, it automatically shuts everything down. Now the main power will still be on because that's a separate switch, but as far as the control panel goes, it'll go off and you have to go over and manually turn it back on.
You have to go back and reset it. There again, that's a safety feature to keep burning itself.
And it's got neat little lights that tell you when the water's flowing and when the burner's on and when the fan's on and all these little things. So it's got all these little bells and whistles on the bottom of it there that lets you know what's going on.
But we probably should also point out that this is on a shore connection. She's docked, in other words. It's not using like boondocking where you're using the onboard water pump tank. We haven't
Right,
had that
but I
yet.
could use
Well, yeah. It's designed where you can. We just haven't tried it yet. You.
You keep saying we like
We.
you're there.
Well, I feel a vested interest in this pump. You know, I was there on the phone when you were.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you feel a vested interest.
But you did all the work, and I do want to.
And
make
I
that
do
clear.
appreciate all of your support and encouragement. You have been great through the whole thing.
Well, I've learned a lot through the whole thing, and like we said at the onset of this, I plan to be on the working end of it too, and
Yeah.
I should have a much easier time thanks to all of her troubles. Thank
And
you.
I did give you all my leftover butyl tapes.
You did, yeah. I got all. Yeah, that's right. I got the leftover end.
I had to buy 10 feet and I needed like 4. So-
needed this much in the end.
Yeah.
But it would have been. That's the way it would have been if you'd have had to buy some PEX too.
Yes.
If you had gone into because we
Yeah, if I
discussed,
needed that 4 inches of PEX, I would have had to buy a 10-foot piece.
discussed repexing everything, and it was like you have to buy so much to get
Yeah.
the 4 or 5 inches that you need, and it's just not cost effective if you could figure out another way to do it. So
Eventually, I do want to go in and replace the hot and cold lines that are just slightly too short, and I had to finagle to get them over there. If I could get some slack in those, I would feel a little more comfortable, especially before I move her, which is going to be at least another 6 months before I even look at that.
Mhm.
Look at moving, not necessarily look at replumbing, but
All right. So what's the next big major remodel project?
I'm painting. If y'all have seen the pictures of our old house, you understand when I say I'm painting, I don't mean I'm grabbing a roller and slapping some paint on the wall. I mean I'm grabbing a very tiny paintbrush.
This is art. It's art.
I will live in art. That's all there is to it. I refuse to not live in art.
Life is too short to not live within your artwork. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. I fully expect you to be putting up pictures of the old house. The house you're currently
I'll put some
living
in there.
in.
Yeah, I get some shots. Of course,
Yeah.
we've done some filming before in the bedroom, which
Yeah.
is kind of the
With that cardboard headboard that nobody believes is
which is
cardboard until I tell
the
them it is.
draw of the project, you know. So
With
yeah.
its, and then on the ceiling, I'm doing the pearlescent finish with the blue background.
Mhm.
So it's the blue is like not got it light enough. But if you have if you're just looking at it, it looks like it's white. But if you put it up against something white, you can tell it is blue. And then I'm going to put a pearlescent finish over the top of that. So I'll have a really cool ceiling that'll change colors according to where you're looking.
So somewhere on down the road, I'll get her to do a whole set of profile pictures, and we'll show you the finished product too. But,
Yeah.
you know, and then we're out. Thanks for your efforts on the water heater. I'm glad it worked out for you, and thanks so much for sharing your experience with us here on the MT and Me.
I'm very, very happy to still be a part of the MT&Me.
Mm.
And it was nice to see all of you again.
Well, thanks again to Ree for sharing all that information with us. It's all going to come in extremely handy when I get ready to put a water heater back in Pearl, which her original one, by the way, was sitting like right about here on the other side of the door. But that's the location. I may end up putting one back there again. We'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, there's a very good possibility, at least at this point, that I will be installing a tankless hot water on demand heater in her. So we'll be crossing that bridge on down the road. In the meantime, Ree had carried me back to my vehicle. We had double-checked water and oil levels, and everything looked good. So I said, all right, well, adios. I'm going to go north, you go south, and we'll see what happens. So I take off, and it's not a couple of minutes before my vehicle starts trying to overheat again. I'm talking to her on the phone all this time and saying, I'm still going to have this problem. I may have to limp home because of that. I'll get there, but it just could take some time. So I pull over a couple of times to stop, and then finally I saw a location. I'd made it to the town of Bastrop, which is about halfway point between Crossett and Monroe. And I said, well, let me just find a spot here to pull in and give her a good cooling. So I found a church parking lot that had lots of shade trees, and I paused there to give you this little update. Oh, hello again. Well, we are not quite halfway home, I guess, really. And my car is trying to overheat on me, and I'm not sure why. Check the water, check the oil, everything looks good. But I keeps running hot. Now, granted, it's 110 degrees in the heat index today out here, so on the road it is extremely hot. You can tell I'm hot because I'm driving without the air conditioner just to try and not put any load on the engine. But anyway, I've stopped a few times, just pulled over to let it cool off 10 minutes, and then get back, drive some more. I might get 2 miles, might get 10 miles, it'll heat back up. So this time I've made it to what is this? St. John Missionary Baptist Church here on the outskirts of Bastrop, Louisiana. It's a beautiful little Baptist church, and it has a beautiful little graveyard right behind it. They have a nice shady parking lot. So I pulled in where I can get some shade and enjoy the breeze and give the old girl here time to cool off good before I limp on back home. I'll make it home It's just going to take a while. Normally, it's a 1 hour trip to Monroe one way, so it's about an hour going back, and it's going to take me a little longer this time. But hey, I've still got my PJ's coffee, and I'm not too terribly hot and uncomfortable, and I'm full of delicious Indian food. Thank you, Taste of India. And while I'm at it, thanks again to Ree for meeting me in Monroe. She's on her way back south to Pineville, and she's not overheating, which is good. She's not having any problems at all, which is great. She'll be home long before me. But thanks again for meeting me and giving us the update on the installation of that tankless or impulse, you really call it an impulse hot water on demand water heater that she recently put in to her camper. Okay, so anyway, cheers. Here's to getting my car cooled off and back on the road. About 20 minutes later, there's this. I pulled out of the church parking lot, driving right along. Car was doing okay, not overheating or anything. And going through Bastrop, I start noticing this weird sound from the rear end. I thought, well, that's strange. I don't know what's going on. So I pull over in an empty parking lot to check it, and I'll be darned if I don't have a flat tire. Well, thank goodness Jerry's Tire and Repair was just about 3 blocks up the road. So I limped up the highway, and that's where we are now, getting it fixed. Well, wouldn't you know it, the tire could not be repaired. It had damage on the sidewall, and that's something you can't fix. So I said, okay, give me a new tire. No problem. Well, yeah, problem. They don't have my size in stock. So the guy says, how about your spare? And I said, I got a spare. I think it's okay, but it's empty. There's no air in it, or I would have changed it myself earlier. So he was nice enough to get my spare and air it up for me, put it on my car, and I said, thank you guys, what do I owe you? And they said, nothing. Now, I came in on these fellas about 15 or 20 minutes before closing time. They could have just as easily told me, we're about to shut down. I'm afraid we can't help you today. But no, they went out of their way, did all this work, checked my tire, decided it couldn't be fixed, went to the trouble of getting my spare, airing it up, putting it on, and then wouldn't let me pay them a penny. So, thank you, Jerry's Tire and Alignment. You're some good people, and I will be back to see you once again. They're in Bastrop, Louisiana. Check them out if you get a chance, okay? So, long story short, I obviously made it home. As a matter of fact, after I left the tire center there, driving on that temporary spare, I had no other heating issues at all the way back to Crossett, which is about 28, 30 miles, something like that. Drove all the way, no problems. And since then, I am in the process of getting myself a new tire, getting the heating issue addressed, along with a few other things on the Equinox. So it just goes to show you that the best laid plans for a day can get flipped over not once, but several times before you realize it. Life can be so unpredictable at times. I thought I was going to drive to Monroe, have lunch, talk about water heaters, and drive back in the span of, I don't know, probably 4 hours total, right? Well, foolish me for thinking it could be that simple. But you know what? Everything turned out okay. Had a wonderful visit with Ree. Got some wonderful information about the water heater situation. And gee, got a great meal out of the deal, a good cup of coffee, met some wonderful people at Jerry's Tire and Alignment. So overall, I just couldn't be upset by any of this. I kept kind of pinching myself thinking, you should be getting a little irritated about all this, Russ. I mean, your car's overheating, you can't fix it, you're having to stop every 2 or 3 minutes to cool off, and then you have a flat tire. What else can go wrong, right? But I'm just kind of, hey, stuff happens, and you deal with it, and you move on. So, in addition to learning a little bit about installing a tankless water heater, maybe there was a pretty good life lesson in the course of the day, too. Well, I don't want to wax too philosophical on you, but that's going to be it for this week. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, because it was a day to remember for a while. And in the meantime, I need to thank you for watching this far with me. I love you, my nomies. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. At least give me a thumbs up on this video, and join us every week here on the MT and Me, because quite obviously, you never really know what you're going to get. You even occasionally get something about me working on this beautiful classic RV, which is really what the show's all about. Most of the time. Take care, my gnomes. Till next time around, I'm Russ, safe and sound at home despite Wednesday, and we will talk later.